Hey guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching doing the trade review for, it's Monday evening, the March 8th, 2021. So I wanted to cover a couple of things tonight, but first let's just see how the zones work from today and trade locations. So, these zones get published from, the profile chart that I put up every day, right? And so each of these locations either are anomalies or single prints or areas where we're looking for key turning points in the trade, right? So I'm going to do something here real quick. I'm going to remove the VWAP off, hide it for a moment. And then, so what you can see in this chart, this is the open today. Let me pull it all the way in. All right, so when we came in the morning, there's a color code to the system, right? So yellow, high odds rejection location. Single prints, high odds rejection location. Light blue is an area where you can expect rotation or counter rotation, but it's not a strong area, right? So given that, and then the pink lines are value area high and value area low. So the goal would be this. If I was going to trade today, right, the chart would look something like this. Let me do this really quick because sometimes people ask me, what the chart would look like. So if I duplicate this chart, right, and then I come in here real quick, and I clean this chart up so it just had the highest odds locations, it would look something like this. We get rid of all the blue. And that would be the levels for today, right? So you can argue this morning when we opened up, right, we opened up just below these single prints. So remember, each of these bars is 5 minutes in time frame, right? So we opened up just below the single prints. We initially rejected, we got above, the backside tested, and we kind of just did the normal morning chop in the morning. We had an odd market because NQ was weak and ES was strong, right? ES eventually comes up. This orange line is a prior day high. It's a good potential rejection area. And we would have just simply combined this area with the yellow zone. So you can see the first time into the yellow zone, we rejected, we pushed lower. This, right, if you take a 50-60 retrace off this push, right, so we have to use all our tools. And we don't quite make it to the 50 retrace. We get past the 38, we don't make it to the 50 retrace off the US session lows, right? We come back up, and I'll often talk about stops being taken out, right? So, and again, all I'm talking about here is structure of the market from a 5-minute perspective and what the market will generally do at those areas, right? So if you look, when we came up originally, if someone shorted in here, you always have that idea of, hey, if they shorted, just like if you were over here or they went long over here, everyone's stops had to be parked back here, and everyone's longs had to be parked. Everyone's stops for the shorts had to be parked back over here. And we'll talk about, you'll often hear in trading where someone will say, hey, they just took out my stop, right? Or they just took my stop out. Well, that's exactly what we came and did right over here in this area. They took the stop out just after New York lunch, and then we rolled down, came back to the 50-60 retrace off the high, which is approximately still in this area right here. When we came to that area, we found a responsive trade, and what it did here is we came down from the high to the low, right? And so this was a 50 retrace from this low to this high, but then we did another 50 retrace from this high to the swing back up. And so this would create an AB. You hear that term AB, and then this would be equals CD, right? And so that was the structure overall. Hold on a second there. Let me put my phone up to charge. There we go. And so that was the structure for the move to the downside, right? So what does all this do for us, right, when we're trading? And by the way, as we're going here, if you'll take a moment to read the disclaimer as soon as I can find it, pop it up. So we'll open up here real quick. it is. And all this says is past performance is not indicative of future results. All right, this is for educational purposes only. All right, I am not soliciting anybody to buy or sell anything whatsoever. Don't trade with money you can't afford to lose, right? And consult your registered financial advisor, which I am not, and your risk trading plan before ever investing or trading any financial instrument. Most importantly, take what you like and leave the rest, right? So if I was going to describe how today went, first of all, I didn't trade great. I didn't trade poorly. I didn't trade great today, right? There was actually a substantial amount of room for very dramatic improvement for my day. And that's what I want to accomplish out of each day is come back and go, well, how could have I done this better? And today, the first thing that I see that I could have done better is I could have looked for trades in the 50-60 retrace area and executed at a much higher level, right? So the other thing that we like to do, and so this is for the people in the room, really. If you come back in here and you put in the RTH VWAP, which I'm going to do right now, into this mix. So, guys, I had the short read up here. What I was trying to do, we had it right. This is where I initially shorted ES, and what I was looking for, let me erase these lines. So I was looking for an A, B, C, D, and I didn't complete the steps. So tonight in my journal, what I'm writing is when I'm looking for that backside test of VWAP after we first break underneath, make sure that I go and look to make sure there's not a 50-60 tag somewhere nearby. So really what I want to focus on today is this 50-60 retrace here for the short. And the reason I want to focus on it is I had the read correct. I thought we would come down to 38.40. The 38.20 was a bonus. But this short right here, I got stopped on it and it really bothered me. And I want to improve it for future use. So I'm going to take this level right in here. So I explained the levels, right? And I want to always go in there and find one thing I can do better for the following day, right? And there's two things that I'm really interested in. First of all is where can I get a great entry on a trade? But the second one is where can I double my position size with no risk to my account from where I started the day, right? I may have risk in that individual trade. I may give back profits, but I want to be able to double that setup. So we're going to focus, guys, right on this area, right in here in this 330, 1345 area. Okay, so we're going to break this down and we're going to go to the smaller time frame charts. I'm going to get rid of this, slide this over here. And then we're going to lower the profile. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to look at the 175. I think would probably be the wisest for us to go look at. And when you come to the 175, so where I was trying to grab the short was up at 38.60. Right, so this is where we were looking for the short, and I nailed it initially. Right, I shorted this roughly. I don't have the exact number. I don't recall, but I know I shorted roughly this right here. I was a little bit early, but I shorted this. And I had profits all the way down here. I took a little bit of heat in here, but not much. And it did exactly what I wanted. So what I wanted the market to do is exactly what it did, which was it came down, broke under VWAP, did a retrace, came right up to this area, and then rejected down. So now I want to start my research in terms of how could have I done that better, or what could have I done better to improve that trade. So the first thing that I would notice when I look at this is I come back in, and the first thing that I see is I have, hold on one second. I have no setup in here on the 175. So that's a 1.75 range bar. I have no setup that would be indicative to me of taking this trade. Importantly, when I'm looking at this is I really I got so convicted on the short side of this trade that I didn't wait for my highest odds setup. I just simply didn't. And as a matter of fact, it just didn't come till all the way over here. It was a 3-bar arrangement right over here. And it was below VWAP. And unfortunately, I just didn't wait. And what I ended up doing is I got the short, I got the rotation down. I did not cover over here, and I let it come all the way back against me and just stopped me out before it rolled to the downside. I had generally the correct idea. So the one thing I'm looking at here is on a 175, I did not get that set up, right? So the next natural question is, did this trade belong on a 1.5 range chart is a reasonable question to ask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, knock it down a tick to a 1.5 because it was the afternoon. And was there any more clarity there? Did I miss the trade because I didn't see the setup? And so what we'll look at again is if we come up into this exact same area. So the picture looks a little bit different, but it's kind of the same idea. So the first thing I see is I didn't get the setup in this area, nor did I get the setup in this area for what I'm looking for, which is I would like some kind of fractal, divergent fractal, or 3-bar combo. And I just didn't get it up here in this area. I would have liked to have it. It didn't show up. So why is that important, right? I had the overall read, but I didn't get the setup that I was generally looking for. So the first thing that tells me is I would have still been better off just not doing anything here because I ended up getting stopped out anyways, right? I didn't cover the trade here because I thought we were going to roll lower. And then it came up, ended up taking out my stop. And so this is an important journaling question, right? How often do I want to go back to, do I want to take my trades in this perfect kind of manner, right? Do I want everything set up there? So the one thing I noticed is I got this divergent fractal. This little blue diamond means that this one bar was divergent and that it tells me that buyers are trapped here. However, it was not a speed bar. It wasn't yellow. And I didn't get any algos associated with it anywhere in around here. So this is a maturity question for me and something I need to improve on, right? I just didn't get the trade set up in this area. If anything, I might have gotten it here, right? And I could have taken a smaller stop and looked to get reset. So then there's another question here, which is, could have I come over and gone to a 2-point bar? Would have that helped? What I'm looking for here is I'm not trying to curve fit. I'm just going, hey, did any of this set up the way I needed it to set up? And the answer to the question is that I could have used this here, but none of this was my highest odds setup for the rotation down. It just simply wasn't. And I've got to be okay with the setup not coming. This is pretty much what I was looking for over here. And that was already my target to the downside, so I wasn't going to take that trade. And you can argue quite effectively that I just didn't follow my process here, right? So now going back in my notes, this is how I would handle that, right? First of all, how do I want to handle this? I don't want to take any trades in this area if I don't have at least a 2-bar combo, which I didn't even have here, of a speed bar triangle down. Even if I had that, again, I could have used this here, but I really usually want it off the apex. And I get it enough at the time, like you got it right here. Let me show you what I mean by that. On a 2-range bar, I go look. How could have I been short today? So I already had a pretty good idea that coming up here at 12 o'clock, that we had potential shorts because of the weakness in NQ, right? So let's go back and ask another question. What's a better way that I could attack this, right? So I'm going to do this slowly. I'm probably going to be on the 175, so I'm going to drop back down to that. Do the range. And the first thing that I notice up here is, where did I get any kind of 3-bar combo? So guys, when we're in the room, right, what are we looking for? So there's a couple things we're looking for. First of all, I need a divergent fractal that's pointed to the downside. And all I'm asking is that these triangles get pointed to the downside here. So if I'm looking for that, it's these are my two. That bar is divergent. That bar is divergent. So why is that important? Because I know if I get underneath this, we're likely to fall away, right? And that was my first divergent fractal underneath. Plus you had this third one sitting right over here. So I kind of created a level. And if you look, so the next question you want to ask is that true? Well, it is. And you'll see it again and again, right? You can see over here we had a divergent fractal. And one of the things I got to go back in and put into the notes is, first triangle you get above the divergent fractal, as long as it doesn't get back below the divergent fractal, you are probably good to go. So you'll see this is your divergent fractal, right? And you can see that was a triangle above, and it pushes. This is your last divergent fractal right here. This is your first triangle down right over here, and it falls away. All right. So was there anything on top that would have told me, right? And really, there wasn't a head and shoulders here or anything else. This is my last stopped out seller prior to the high. They one tick the high over here. And so we can see the element of the divergent fractal coming into play. And we had a pretty good idea that once we got underneath 38, let's call it 38.69, we could roll lower. So that would have been a better place to potentially set up the trade. But again, I had this conflict of where VWAP was sitting, and it was a weird day because the markets were separated. But I at least know I can come back and look at this, say, hey, I could have done better in this area, right? When you come back and look at the long at the middle of the day, which I thought was really hard because of how choppy it was. But if you look, again, I'm looking for the 3-bar combos to tell me I've got long or a divergent fractal, right? So if you'll look, a divergent fractal with a triangle up. So it's simply a blue bar, little blue triangle above it, and a triangle up. And if you look, I got it for the long. Again, it was just underneath VWAP. We usually don't get these whole switches back and forth on VWAP. We did today. We usually don't get it, and that's okay. That's just how it worked out today. Again, it was a frustrating day, but if you look at these setups where you got divergent fractal, triangle up at the mid, and again, divergent fractal. And what this was, if you'll go back to the 5-minute chart, this is the 50-60 back. This is when we were right in this 38.50 to 38.43 area. Is that right? 38.43, just over it. I apologize. So this is just in front of the, make sure I have that right. Yeah, that's correct. It's just in front of the 50 retrace, and it was pretty choppy. However, if you look at the general idea, right, you got 3 of them in here. And we obviously really didn't get hurt here. We just kind of said, okay, well, it's underneath VWAP. It's over VWAP. It's kind of all over the place. I want the whole setup to come. The only thing I really could have done to clean this area up. Did the setups work? Yes and no. It was right on VWAP. You really would have wanted this one to push, and it didn't, right? You could have asked for this one to push, and it didn't. It just got really choppy. And if you look at the time of day, this makes sense. It's headed right into New York lunch. It's normally choppy. It's right on VWAP. I don't have anything else to add to that. It just wasn't really clear. The other piece I want to add, and again, this is for the guys in the room, right? Guys and gals in the room. Usually what we're looking for to get exhaustion on this is one of the reasons we weren't aggressively short up here is we wanted to push up into that 3rd and 4th rail, 3 and 4 standard deviations above VWAP, and it didn't do that, right? It's okay. Again, it was a weird day. The only time that we got that push or into some type of head and shoulders reading, right? So if you look over here, I apologize for jumping around. I just want to kind of go through and make sure that we nail the trade entries. If you look over here, remember we had this head and shoulders laid out earlier in the day, but I mentioned that the right shoulder was higher than the left shoulder here, and usually when you want a textbook, you want it the opposite way around. You want the left shoulder higher than the right shoulder. So what we had here was we didn't get a setup except for that star right on top, and what I would have liked is that star to be on top of this yellow bar. It just wasn't, right? It was pretty close. It just wasn't there for hand grenades. And then it was just really hard to break this neckline. It just did not want to do it. It just did not want to go down, right? So if you look in here on what we're would have looked for, would have been a 3-bar combo, which we didn't get over here in the right shoulder, except, excuse me, I'll stand corrected. We got a 3-bar combo here, and I think we actually got this trade profitable, if I remember from this morning. And that fit, right? We came up into that 4th rail. We rolled down, but there was problems. We couldn't get underneath the stopped out buyer. And so why am I going through all this, what we missed or what we didn't get, right? Well, it's easy. Some days things line up perfectly for you, right? And you go, hey, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And some days they don't, right? So I'm going to go back and give you an example. This is the same setup or type of setup from Friday, right? So if you look, Apologize, Friday we were long. So I'm going to show you from the bottom, right? When we come in on this low down here and we're trying to figure out, first of all, the moves were crisp, right? I really have a hard time with its maturity issue thing. And I just don't do as good a job as I'd like to do on this period end of sentence. I just don't do as good a job as I'd like to do on this. So when you come in over here, right, this is what we're looking for. See how we're in that third and fourth rail? So I'm going to spread this out. So even though we're looking for the longs here, it's effectively the same thing, right? So unlike today, see over here how we had an easy time? This is our last buyer to get stopped out prior to setting a low. And we clearly get above that guy, all right? Next, when we come in for the long, when there's a retrace over here, so I'm going to show you this. See how it pushes? And, excuse me, switch that. See how we get this crisp 50-60 retrace? Comes right in, and then within that, look at all the pieces that we have that fall into place. Get the divergent fractal. You've got a 3-bar combo right here. We get triangle down 6A with a no demand bar, and you get a 6B down, right, with a 6A up, again with a fractal, right? These two right here. And both those bars, both those trades lift very nicely. You'll notice this one never stops out, and it pushes up very, very well. And even over here, when it comes back for yet another retrace, right, we make another new high. It comes back into the 50-60. Comes right back into this 50-60 area, and then it gives you a star. We all know that star into the low, right, is very valuable. There's the other star into the low. Get that star into the low, and then you get a 6B, a triangle, and a triangle up, along with a divergent fractal right here. Right, that's just powerful. And see how smoothly it moved out of those. When you got those trades, it moved very, very smoothly out of those areas, right? So that's what it looks like when it works super easy. Now I'll go look at today. See when we're up in this high and we're trying to figure out how to make this work. Let's go back to 9 a.m. So everyone I'm getting stopped out, right? So I'm going to show you. They're all down here, right? So that's one thing I got to remind myself. It's here, and then it's here. This is the last piece that we need to get underneath, right? And so when we really wanted to set up perfectly, right? So we can do one or two things to fix this up. First of all, see that prolonged chop where it went from 9:30 all the way to 10:07 a.m. If you're trying to execute a swing out of that area, that's very difficult. This is very difficult PA to work with, right? Because we're basically rotating up and down 10 points, but we're not making any progress either way, right? Part of the reason for that is when we made the high, we couldn't get this stopped out. If I extend this over, I'm going to have a feeling that once I impulse move underneath, that's going to be my resistance point. So let's see. See how I can't get underneath it? Okay, now that I'm underneath it, that should be resistance, right? And that's exactly what happened. See how it chopped through there? I want to show you this. This is my last stopped out seller prior to making the high. That's what this area represents, right? So see how once I get underneath, I'm rejecting. I get a 3-bar combo for rejection. I wouldn't have taken it because I'm right on VWAP. I'm pushing into where I know there's going to be responsive buyers. But that's an important area, right? So when we come over here, I kind of have to start that count again because so remember, that's the first time underneath. This is the second time underneath, so we fall away. But also when I look up here, I could have done this a little bit differently, and this is what I'm going to show you. And if y'all are getting bored watching this, I totally understand because it's really detailed work that we're going through here to find our best trade setups. So This ends up being my last stopped out seller before the high. Again, you can see how this is the first time underneath, right? So we come back up. This is the second time underneath. Usually that second time underneath is enough to fall away. And in this particular case, it took one more push. And the thing that we missed was we took out the high by a tick, right? We didn't get a 3-bar combo over here, but if you look, we didn't get a 3-bar combo here. But where we did get the 3-bar combo that I didn't execute on was right over, I don't know if I was just tired, but I did not execute in the way I wanted to execute. Right over here, right? Triangle up, star, triangle down, and it was perfect for the short entry, right? So that's about how far away we were from just having a phenomenal day, an impulse to move below the 40. And then if you look here, once we're in over here, we just didn't get the algo setup that we wanted for the short there. Like everything else was perfect. I tried to kind of freestyle it and ended up getting stopped. Again, not a bad day, not a good day, just kind of a blah. But if you look, we came right up into the 50-60, guys. And this is so imperative, right? I had the short here, and I had my stop sitting right at the 50 retrace. It was a massive mental error. I at least needed to move it behind the 62 retrace if I was going to do that. Recover here and look for a new entry, which, by the way, I wouldn't have gotten another entry, but I wouldn't have taken the stop, right? So, damned if you do sometimes and damned if you don't. It was just a tough day with NQ and ES being so wildly different, right? So, at any rate, long story short, I learned my lesson from that today, and it was a day that really required more patience than I was willing to give it because of the difficulty of getting the pushes below. What are my key takeaways from today? Getting the setups on the backside test of the stopped out buyer from the high is really, really important, right? If you can't get underneath that stopped out buyer, getting the extension down becomes very, very challenging, or up for that matter. Number 2, look for the 3-bar combos, look for the fractal speed bar triangle down, which again, I was missing that today to a certain degree, and those are key setups, right? And then some days, just be willing to accept the algo is not going to fire in an order that's going to pay us, and that sucks. The other things to take away from today were that we are in futures rollover the entire week, and that it's going to produce some kind of funky moves, right? The best way I have to describe that. It's going to produce some funky moves, and we just kind of have to be okay with that. Funky moves are going to happen, right? And it's up to you, it's up to me just to be okay with it. And I will be. So at any rate, that's my 2 cents. Let's go fix up the charts for tomorrow, right? So if we look at the profile, and I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this 2 videos so that if someone just wants to see the zones, they can pop right over to it. So that's a trade review for today. If you'd like to come visit us in the room, send me an email to tradeandperform@gmail.com, TRADE, the letter N, and perform, PERFORM, @gmail.com. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We will improve for tomorrow. Last week was kick-ass, and we still have 4 very good days to do a better job moving forward. Okay, guys. Talk to y'all later.